Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Preston, and today we are going to be talking about the Bury St. Edmunds Cloisters Cross. Now, this is a little project that I'm doing for my humanities class. It is the final project, and so we're going to be going over this short little presentation to tell you about what the cross is, when it was made, why it was created, and just a little bit of background behind it. It's considered a really, everywhere you look online and when you research it'll say it's a masterpiece. It's very intricate and detailed. I want to call it a masterpiece, but it is pretty crazy to look at because this was made all the way back in the 1100s. The late 1100s, early 1200s is when they think it was made, and the level of detail that you'll see on it is amazing. And to think some old bald monk with a little whittling knife carved it in his monastery is pretty nuts. So let's talk about that monk, actually. His name is Master Hugo, and he was really skilled in the art of illumination. And essentially what that process was during this time, this medieval feudal England time period, they were coming out of the they were coming out of the Dark Ages, and they were really focused on bringing color and detail into their artworks in churches. And as you see here, the Bury St. Edmunds Bible, or for short Bury Bible, which Master Hugo did him in partnership with he released it with the abbey, the monastery that he was with, of course, and he was also commissioned by King Edmund of the time. Lots of Edmunds in this. But essentially, the way he brought color and the level of detail into this Bible kind of revolutionized the way they were written at the time, and then you would see these pop up everywhere over feudal England in the sort of that Romanesque style art. Now this is another piece of Master Hugo's work that he did. Okay. So this piece right here is known as Master Hugo's Christ in Majesty. It's essentially just a glorification of Jesus. So here's the thing. Master Hugo and other English monks at this time were very much against the thought of Jewish people in their country, and obviously that's not a good thing at all. Times are very different back then, and people would kill each other over religion, like they still do today. But it was even worse back then, and they would use their art and they would use their literature to truly exemplify this. This isn't an example of that. It's more so Hugo's way of promoting Christianity throughout the region. But the level of color and detail that you can see on the lion in the bottom left hand corner and the bull in the bottom right hand corner is really, really new to feudal Egypt at this time, and the color is just absolutely unheard of. Now let's actually talk about the cross itself. Like I said, I wouldn't call it a masterpiece given the implications behind it. However, you can't ignore the amount of detail and level of thought process and skill that went into this. There's a reason it's an artifact. It's from that time. It's because this guy, Master Hugo, was pretty top tier when it came to feudal English artists. It's carved out of a foot-long piece of walrus ivory. Funnily enough, at first glance you would think it's wood, but it's actually ivory. It's why it stood the test of time. Wood would have just rotted and deteriorated, but ivory stands the test. On this front side here, you can see the story of Jesus' death and resurrection around the three nodes, starting from the left-hand side, the top, and finishing on the right-hand side. And that sort of indentation coming out of the middle of the cross is supposed to be a tree. They're not too sure what it's supposed to represent, except for maybe life and growth. And you can see Christ in the middle. On the other side, which I'll show you here in a second, it's covered with Hebrew prophets holding their predictions of the coming of Christ, Mark, Luke, John, and we'll look at that in a second. Um, in my presentation here, this is when I really sort of got into the bad part about it. This is on display at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City for its artistic significance. However, it's the inscriptions that you can see, the lettering on the signs are like really bad curse words against Jewish people. And essentially, when Hugo would carry this around, and preach, he would kind of advocate for their removal from England. And unfortunately, something really bad happened in Bury St. Edmunds, which is in Suffolk, England now. In 1189, there was a massive hazing and kind of like a mass murder where they killed a bunch of them, and then shortly after that, they were all forced to leave. It wasn't their brightest moment. I will tell you that much. Here's the back side of the cross, as I mentioned. You can see the Mark, Luke, John figures on the left, top, and right-hand side. I'm not super well versed in those stories, so I can't remember if it's like Mark's lion, Luke's dragon, and or what have you. But on the actual like shafts and naves of the cross, you can see all those Hebrew prophets I was talking about holding up their predictions of the coming of Christ. So, and these right here, these fancy little guys, are what you call cloisters. This architectural feature was found in all sorts of abbeys and monasteries in the ancient medieval world, and some still today. So the reason you'll see a collection of artwork called the Cloisters is because they come from ancient monasteries that featured this architectural type of thing. It's not type of thing, it's an archway. You see it, you're looking at it. It's there on the screen for you. They're cool looking. If any of you guys have ever watched the Harry Potter films, these were featured a lot throughout their hallways and their archways, were these cloisters. Anyways, that is all that I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. And I hope you learned a little bit about Master Hugo and his Bury St. Edmunds Cloister cross. Even though it has some bad stuff behind it, it is a really innate piece of